What's going on, my planting people? My name is Lithius and welcome to an exciting episode of Roots Ready. In today's episode, I'm going to be giving you an update on the rarest plant in my collection, and that is none other than my Philodendron Spiritus Sancti. Me and this plant have been on quite the journey, so I'll give you a quick overview of how far we've come. I bought this plant when it was still very much considered a rare plant. It was probably still one of the rarest plants that you could get your hands on in the house plant collecting hobby. In fact, I bought this plant as almost a single leaf cutting when I first got it, when I first saw it on eBay, which is where I got it from. It only had one leaf, but by the time it got to me, it had already been putting out another leaf, so that was really, really good. But despite this, it was still quite a big risk for me, but I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and take the plunge. Never in my plant collecting journey had I ever taken a risk like this, spending or invested in such a plant like this, but you know, it was one that I've had my eye on for a long time. The price was very high, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to treat myself to something nice, so I decided to get this plant. And luckily I did get it, and it proved to be a very fast growing plant. So here you can already see that this plant was pushing out leaves like it was nobody's business. I think at its fastest rate, it was probably putting out maybe a leaf and a half, maybe a month. So it would push out a new leaf, and before that new leaf would even harden, there'll be another one on the way. So that filled me with loads of confidence, like, okay, cool, I can do this plant. It's settled in and it's doing great. So that was it. I just left the plant and it just kept on growing and growing and growing. It grew to the point where it actually outgrew the pot that it came in. So I went ahead and I did a repot on this plant. I'm also going to be repotting it into a slightly larger pot and into soil, something with a bit more substance for this plant. As I said, it's a really airy mix, so I just want to be sure that the plant doesn't, you know, suffer any root rot or anything like that. And I'm just gonna have to manage my watering a lot better, especially knowing that there is a huge root mass here covered in moss, which will definitely hold on to way, you know, much more water than the roots on the outside. And make sure the plant is stable in there. Gonna add in some of the beneficial fungi that helps the plant uptake more nutrients. There we have it. The Spiritus Sancti has now been potted up. Now you would think, okay, let's stop there. It's only been, what, about a year at this point? I think I've had this plant in my collection about that sort of time. But no, me being me, I said, no, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep pushing this plant to its limit. So what did I decide to do? Both the plant and I decided to go for a chop. So I went ahead, I cut my hair off, I had dreads, cut it off. This was about 3 months ago, and I took the plant along for that journey with me because I also propagated it. Now the Philodendron Spiritus Sancti is one of those plants that you have to be careful when you're propagating it. The internodal spaces are extremely, extremely small. So in a space sort of like this, you might have about 4 or 5 nodes. So when you're making a propagation, you have to be super, super precise. And you can see in this clip how precise I was being. It took. Ooh, this is going to be the biggest chop of my life. I'm really nervous. So I've just noticed, you see this little nub here, this is a root, but just below it, there is a little pink dot that you might be able to pick up. That's a node, actually. So as well as not wanting to damage any of the roots, I want to be careful that I'm not damaging any nodes, because I want this plant to keep growing. And if I cut it there, then that's it. No more nodes from that point. I think that node is going to have to come with this cutting, actually. I don't think there's another way around it. Okay, I think I'm ready. I think this is it. There's no turning back now. Ooh. Oh my goodness, that was scary. That was scary. We've done it. We've chopped it. It took a lot of precision, but in the end, we made that chop. And that brings us to today. And 3 months later, what's happened? And did the plant survive? I know you're on the edge of your seats, so I won't keep you waiting too long. So first we'll start with the mother plant. This is still in the same pot that it was in before and after propagating. I haven't changed anything. The soil has been the same. Actually, I did do a little top up of the soil because I noticed that we had some aerial roots poking the head out of the soil. You can see that just here. These are 2 aerial roots. So I covered them up, and I think that's been successful because I think these roots are well and truly rooted into the substrate. There are some more roots just dotted around the plant, and my aim is to just get as many of them to go back into the soil just to strengthen the plant. But it has been extremely successful. It has hardened off, and not only that, it has actually put out, oh wow, it's put out 3 new leaves since that propagation. So in 3 months time, we've had 3 new leaves on the main stem. So the first leaf, to be expected, was a lot smaller. You can see here where it sort of reverted all the way back to a juvenile leaf. But then the next leaf, the very next leaf, was this gorgeous, shiny, more mature leaf. It's just a little bit damaged just there. I do think that this was my error. I'm not sure how this happened. Anyway, it didn't stop the leaf from growing to this gorgeous, gorgeous thing. The only thing I've noticed is that it's a little bit curled on the edges. I'm not sure exactly why that is. It might just be because the plant is still acclimating and adjusting to being propagated, right? So here is the other leaf, the most recent leaf to emerge. And it's a lot smaller, interestingly, than the one beforehand. And again, I'm not sure exactly why that would be. However, it is a lot thicker in sort of girth, which is really, really nice. But not only that, this plant actually went ahead and it activated a dormant node. And from that node, we have this gorgeous little leaf. So is it a future propagation project? I think so. The only thing I've noticed is that since this additional growth has started, it's definitely been a lot slower. So you can tell that this plant is focusing its growth on the sort of the larger, more established point. And this one is just going to take a bit of a backseat. So eventually, maybe not now, definitely not now. Maybe in the springtime, I might go in and I might propagate that off and see what we're working with, see what the root situation is like under the soil. So this is it. This is the mother plant. It's been highly successful. It's taken a little bit of a step back, but that's to be expected. But overall, it's been very successful. And I couldn't be happier with how this plant has bounced back from such a traumatic propagation. But let me show you what the propagated cutting looks like. Drum roll, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the cutting. Can you believe it? This thing has exploded in growth, just absolutely exploded in growth. I think when I first took this plant out, I believe it was maybe a 2-leaf cutting. So this right here, here we go. This is the oldest leaf on this cutting, and you can see that this was when, before I propagated it, you can kind of see that this plant was sizing up very well from what the previous leaves looked like on the mother plant. So it was growing exceptionally well. So that was the oldest leaf. I believe we already had, no, this leaf was actually just on its way out. So it was just emerging. And you can tell that because it's slightly discolored, just ever so slightly got some yellow tinge to it. And that's just because it was still emerging, it was still coming out. And because it was still emerging, it does affect how the leaf matures. It sort of stops it in its tracks. Nevertheless, this plant carried on, it kept on pushing, the leaf hardened off, albeit with that yellow tinge. And then we had these other 2 beautiful leaves that came out. You can tell again, this one suffered slightly because it's sort of taking that step back because it's failed to grow these lobes. So you can tell that this leaf, when it came out, it was just still acclimating to that propagation. But the latest leaf, and oddly enough, I'm not sure how to feel about this leaf. Personally, I think it is absolutely gorgeous. It is slim and slender and long and shiny and all those beautiful things you want in a leaf. It's almost like that just lovely pendant shaped leaf. However, it is a lot thinner than some of its other leaves. Like, look at this. This is the biggest leaf on the plant, and it's just the size difference is crazy. It's still longer. However, it is a lot skinnier, and I'm not sure why that is. Could it be that the plant hasn't rooted properly? I don't think so, because I'm going to show you what these roots look like. I mean, guys, look at that. That is what you call a very well-rooted plant. And considering that this is only 3 months in the making and the roots are already scaping the bottom, this is very, very well rooted, extremely well rooted. I can only imagine what the mother plant is like in this terracotta pot. I imagine that there is a lot of roots, and that's why this plant has the energy to push out and support that other shoot on its stem. But this one, being that it had basically no roots, it was very, very limited in terms of what it had. It's done exceptionally well. Exceptionally well. And by the way, you would have noticed that I've actually staked this up. And that is because this plant tends to sprawl out. It is sort of those sprawling plants, and it's all in my tiny little thin grow tent thing over here. So space is really at a premium here. So in order to sort of have as many plants as possible fit in this thing, I've had to, stake it up. And it doesn't seem like the plant is damaged the plant. This could be why, it's a bit thinner, but I doubt it. I've got a lot of other plants like that. For example, my binatai as well, slightly off topic. I've also staked it up that way because, again, it's one of those sprawling plants, but we just don't have the space. We just don't have the space. But anyway, let me show you both of these plants side by side. So I do think it's safe to say that it was successful. It certainly was daunting to make such a decision and to make a propagation on a plant that I invested so much of my time and money into, but I think it paid off, and now I've got two gorgeous Spiritus Sancti to show for it. But that was a quick update 3 months after the propagation. And let me know if you have any questions about this. If you're thinking about doing it yourself, I'm more than happy to give you my tips and advice. Hit me up on Instagram if you want that, or let me know in the comments down below. But that's it. And again, thank you so much for watching. And as always, keep planting.